Welcome back. Mr. Taiwo Oyedele is the Chairman, Presidential Committee on Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms. He joins us from our Abuja studio. Mr. Oyedele, thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you, Jeff. Good morning.
All right, fantastic. It's good to have you here. And I have to say, a lot of Nigerians are angry, especially that has to do with the 5%. I was listening to the radio this morning. People are angry. I looked at the front pages of the newspaper. They are very upset. What has been brought upon them, already hardship. And it's okay, no problem. Thank God we have you to give that background explainer, and then they are going to respond in questions. So I know that you have something to share with us in terms of what this tax eventually will do. You've been explaining this for as long as I can remember, but Nigerians don't want to hear anything that has to do with tax. Maybe it's an opportunity again for us to get to see, again, the pros or the cons, if you will. What is false and what is true? Because I follow through the social media, and I heard a lot of things, and I was like, okay, is this really in the law, or is not in the law, or is a hyperbole? So help us make sense of what we're dealing with as we gear towards 2026, when this whole policy will take effect in terms of our laws.
Yes, thank you very much once again, and good morning to Nigerians. So yes, you're right. Nigerians, many Nigerians are angry because it's not peculiar to Nigeria. So anywhere in the world, when people hear about taxes, their initial reaction is to always want to push back and to just want to say no. So what we've actually seen is even the reform that is ongoing around taxation, while the bulk of those reforms are to reduce taxes, both the number of taxes, the tax rates, the tax burden. There are even instances where we share a post that is saying that small businesses have now been exempted, and you see comment there and somebody is still abusing us to say, you don't know more than tax. So that's understandable for people to be angry, especially when they feel like they're not seeing the returns or benefit for the taxes that they pay. But I think it's also important for us because our objectives are the same. We want a better country for ourselves, that we should therefore be more attentive to the details of reforms. So it's not just everything that we have to then start complaining about, even when the intentions are for the benefit of the country. So these tax reforms, like you rightly mentioned, they are into 4 different laws. And altogether, these tax laws are introducing over 200 measures and changes to the tax system. Because there's always the temptation to go with a single story or a single narrative. There was a time when we're still working on the bills with the National Assembly that you would think that the whole bill was about VAT sharing formula. So in the past few days now, it's been about the surcharge on fuel. A couple of weeks before then, it was about the 800,000 at 0%, and anything above that, people will pay 20%. And some of these things are just people not fully understanding what the law provides, and people who either, for whatever reasons, just decide to cook up things that they don't even fully understand. And suddenly, everybody's a tax expert trying to analyze what the tax law says. And sometimes they say it with so much confidence, and you want to believe what they're saying, even when it is wrong. So, thanks to Channel for this platform to try and clarify some of the issues. And my job here today is not to try and speak for the government. That's not the job that has been given to me. It's to lead some very patriotic and eminent Nigerians from all walks of life to try and reform an important aspect of our economy. So that's what I'm here for. So the proverbial, elephant and the blind man is that the blind man touching the elephant and seeing different parts of it, and they concluded, as one thought it was a fan, one thought it was, a snake, one thought it was a spear, and so on and so forth, and none of them got the right answer because they did not see the big picture or the complete picture. So my encouragement to Nigerians is just spend time and look at details of those laws. We've shared them on our website, fiscalreforms.ng. You can download copies of those laws. You see a lot of analysis we have done. Because at the end of the day, if you don't focus on what will benefit you, you may just miss out on the advantages of the reforms. One thing I can tell you with all sincerity is that those reforms will benefit all Nigerians, particularly the low income, middle income, as well as small businesses, as well as industries as well, including manufacturers. So having said that, let me quickly speak to the surcharge on fuel. So one very important message for people to know is that this surcharge was not introduced by this government. It was introduced in 2007. And then it wasn't implemented because government was subsidizing fuel. So while we were doing this tax reform, it wasn't even in the original proposal. So it wasn't like the president proposed it to the National Assembly. But in the process of working on the bills, these issues came up. And then the decision was made that we shouldn't have different agencies collecting taxes. So the law that set up these surcharge mandated FEMA, that's the Federal Road Maintenance Agency, to collect this surcharge. 40% of it was to be for federal government roads, and 60% was meant to go to states of the revenue collected. Like I said, it wasn't implemented. And because of this reform, many taxes, so many of them were repealed from our laws. For example, there was a tax introduced on telecommunication by the previous administration that was already removed from the law as we speak. There was one on cybersecurity that has now been harmonized, and so on and so forth. So many taxes, people easily say that President Tinubu is a tax master, he's introducing taxes, but I'll challenge anybody to tell me, one tax that this president has introduced. So most of the taxes, even the cybersecurity levy, was introduced in the previous administration. But to prevent that has been implemented arbitrarily without proper consideration for the stage of the economy, issues around inflation. So the decision was made to put this in the new law and to put a commencement date that is going to be in the future based on an order to be gazetted by the minister. So nobody will just, spontaneously introduce the tax and create problems for the system. So actually, I can tell you that before these tax laws were enacted, shortly after it was signed, there was already an attempt by the agency to even collect the tax. And we have to say to them, you have to wait, you can't collect it because the new law says you are not the one to collect, and commencement will not happen until the minister says so. So there's nothing that says this tax will start 1st of January 2026. People need to get that right. TUC that is planning to go on strike to say it should be removed. I don't know what they want government to remove because it hasn't been imposed. And there's no regulation that says it will be imposed from January. The TUC should have complained and protested when this was introduced since 2007. So we only put it into the new tax law as part of the legislative process for transparency and for orderly implementation. I know everybody is concerned about the impact on inflation. I'm concerned myself. But we also know that around the world, road infrastructure is very critical. Nigeria has close to about 200,000 kilometers of road. Only about 60,000 of them are paved. This is the major reason why transporting anything in Nigeria, whether it's good, whether it's people, it's costly, it's time-consuming, and it's not very safe. If you look at the rural inflation on food and you compare it with inflation on food in the urban center, sometimes the difference is as high as 500 basis points. That's about 5%. In most countries, that will be under 1%. And the majority of the issues that we are dealing with are to do with the state of the road, are to do with illegal taxes being collected at every point when you are moving things around. All those issues are being addressed. We have to recognize that even with the removal of subsidy on fuel, which is helping government to address some of the revenue challenges, that the huge gap that we still have in terms of infrastructural development is not going to be addressed by those revenues alone. So the idea is for the country to try and mobilize revenue in a way that does not create economic distortion, that does not burden the poor and vulnerable, and so on and so forth. Some of the strategy for this, surcharge could be to time it at a time when there is an appreciation in the value of the currency. Naira gained about 1% just yesterday alone. If Naira gains about 5%, and then you put in this tax, nobody will notice there won't be changes in the pump price. Or if the price of crude oil in the international market drops by around 5%, you can also have it at that point. And then we can all focus on how do you spend this money to ensure that it's dedicated to fixing roads that can make all our lives better and bring down the prices of items. For example, we have the road infrastructure tax credits, that is done with the private sector. And we've seen the advantages. People who live in Apapa in Lagos, for example, will not make any complaints at all. Based on that policy, the likes of Dangote, NLNG, Lafarge, MTN are fixing roads. No, there's nothing that says we can have a similar arrangement for the private sector to be involved in ensuring that this money is efficiently utilized. So I think people need to try and take a step back and think about how can these work for our country. And if you all conclude that it can't work, then of course the process is there for the National Assembly to then remove it from the law. So I'll then quickly speak to a few other issues where I see a lot of misconception and misunderstanding in the public space. There's this general assumption in Nigeria that you can simply say that is your life better today than it was 2 years ago. And you then quickly jump into a conclusion that says no, and therefore it means that all the policies are bad. But I always say that that is a very wrong basis for concluding whether reforms are right or not. There is an invalid assumption that we make, which is that if these policies have not been introduced 2 years ago, prices of goods and services would be the same now as they were 2 years ago. And there's nothing that can be further from the truth than that, because the country was getting very close to a total collapse. We got to a point where there was no remittances from NNPC to the Federation account. No money was being given to the central bank in terms of dollars. And the NNPC was using future production of crude oil to subsidize PMS. Of course, we know there was a lot of corruption in that whole process. But the reality was, I think that Nigeria didn't have up to 6 months left for that whole system to collapse. And if these reforms have not been introduced, today you don't even have Dangote refinery refining petroleum product, because how would you borrow $20 billion to build a refinery and then sell it at subsidized amount and hope that government pays you? So some of these reforms, while they may not be yielding the micro results at the household level as of yet, the way we want it, they are showing the right signs from the macro level. And you need the macro to be in place before you can fix the micro. So the challenge for government and policymakers is to accelerate how you transform these economic gains at the macro level, that's the big level, to the lives and livelihood of the individual Nigerians. So on personal income tax, for example, you're exempted from paying personal income tax from January if you earn anything around 100,000 naira per month or less, which is even more than minimum wage. If you're a middle-class person who earns something around 1.8, 1.9 million or less, you will see a reduction in the taxes you pay. And then for high-income earners and high-net-worth individuals, you see marginal increases in the amounts you pay depending on the size of your income. And this is how it's done everywhere in the world, to protect the vulnerable people and let the people who have the ability to pay a little more, pay a little bit more. So what you see on the screen now is some of the analysis we have done. We actually have a tax calculator on our website, and you will see the QR code on the screen where you can easily go there on your calculator, on your phone rather, and just put in your information about the taxes, the income that you earn, and it will tell you how much tax you're paying now versus the one you pay under the new law. And you see that for the majority of Nigerians, like 97, 98%, will be paying no tax or less taxes under the new law when it comes into effect. We also have small businesses. Before, the exemption threshold was 25 million. So what we now have under this new tax law is up to 100 million. So you make up to 100 million naira a year. You don't even need to pay corporate income tax. It's 0%. We didn't have this before. We also have instances of, charging value-added tax, and you can see the list of taxes and levies on the screen. That are so many. There are more than 60. These were not introduced by this government. What this government is doing is to say, this list does not make sense. Can we find a way to repeal many of them? And the ones that are useful, can we harmonize them so that everything all together that you see on this screen will be less than 10? So it will be a single digit. That process is ongoing. Some of it have been done already in the new tax law. Some of them require that we even amend our constitution to be able to implement them. Like you have things like bicycle tax, wheelbarrow tax, produce tax, radio and TV levies in the constitution. So you have to address those issues before the harmonization process can be completed. And it is this government that is saying that those issues must be addressed squarely. As a small business owner, for example, you don't need to charge VAT, you don't need to do withholding tax, and your employees, who are unlikely to be any more than 100,000, are exempted. So you can just focus on doing your business and growing. So this is the whole idea of the reforms. And even beyond that as well, we also have, apart from enhancing the net take-home pay of workers and self-employed people, we also have provisions in these new tax laws to reduce the prices of goods and services by way of VAT. So there's what we call zero-rated VAT. What that means is if you are buying an item, let's say a bottle of water or an item of food, or you're paying for healthcare, or you're paying for education, there will be no VAT. That's number one. Number two, any VAT incurred by the person providing that good or service to you, in the process of producing that good or service, that VAT will be refunded by the government, so that that business does not carry the burden of VAT that they need to pass to you indirectly by way of higher taxes. We've never had these in Nigeria before. What we had was exempt on certain items, which means no VAT, but you can incur VAT in producing the item. So let me use bread as an example. Bread currently, under the existing law, is exempt. What that means is when you sell bread, don't charge VAT. But the person who produced the bread, the baker, would have incurred VAT on setting up the bakery, on buying oil, on buying sugar, on airtime, on the vehicle for distributing the bread, and so many other VAT, and that baker has to bear the VAT. What do you think the person would do? They will do their calculation very well, add it to the cost of production, add their profit, and then charge you for bread. So you don't see VAT on it, but there is VAT. What this new reform has now done is to say even the baker, not only is that there is no VAT on bread, any VAT incurred by the baker, it will be refunded to the baker so that the price and the cost of bread can come down. And we have this also for education and for healthcare.
Yes.
So in a nutshell, you find that these overall, these tax reforms will benefit the country. Regardless of who you might be, you benefit. Even the high net worth individuals will benefit because their companies will see a reduction in the taxes that they pay. So we think that people should pay attention to the details, not just run with the headlines.
All right, Oyedele, we decided to so that you can run through, because the questions is literally like an avalanche. I don't know how many we can take. We did tell the people that it's more of them, less of us. But before we start reading all of the emails that we've just gotten, of course, Nigerians are angry about the 5% tax, and they want it out. They don't even want it at any point in time. So that is a feeler I get. But there's one part that I would like you to clarify in just 1 minute, and then we can now go to the emails, which has to do with the monies. People on social media, people are seeing other people educating them to the effect that every money that comes through their account, if the tax people will be looking out for those monies such that they should look for a way to separate income from maybe gifts and all of that. Else, tax people will see that every other money that comes into the account is all part of income, so they will tax it. So I want you to bring clarity to that. How would the taxman know that somebody gifted you an amount of money from salaries, from every other? How does the tax person want to work around that complexity, especially now that Nigeria, we're used to black tax?
Yes, thank you for that question. So it's one of the areas where we've seen that people do not understand what the new law is saying. So number one, whatever is in your bank account does not translate to taxable income. It could be a loan. It could be that you were buying something on behalf of someone. It could be a gift. So what the law says is that as an individual or as a company, you have the obligation to make a declaration yourself. At least you know which one is your income. So you declare that income and you pay tax on it. We call it self-assessment. So one other thing that this law has now done is, while we allow you to make your self-declaration, we will use intelligence within the system to validate whether what you are saying is correct and reliable. So I can easily declare to the government that life is hard and the whole of last year I only made 1 million naira. And government will say, but we see on your payment card, you went to malls, you went to restaurants, and you spent altogether for the year 3 million naira. Where did you see the difference? So, and it's not like government will ask you to pay tax on that difference immediately. They will ask you to explain it. So based on this thing we have in your bank account, we saw that you bought a new car, that you registered, you built a new house, and you connected to electricity. We saw that you traveled abroad. So it's just intelligence, and this is what is done everywhere in the world. This is the only way to ensure that you reduce evasion, and by reducing evasion, you can increase government revenue without new taxes. So I can say to everybody that if you have, a gift from your family or friend, donation into your bank account, nobody is going to tax that. But of course, if you are rendering services and you are receiving money into your bank account or anywhere else, and you are not disclosing it, there will be intelligence to know that you are hiding from the tax authorities, and then they'll come after you.
I think it's interesting to hear that come from you, Mr. Oyedele. It's such a big relief, and it also tells us of the fact that there is no hiding place indeed right now, because you're going to trace everybody through their BVNs, through their bank accounts. I'm glad that Jeffrey had to ask that question, because there are other questions as regards even those who do some illegal business, the fraudsters, 6 million into their accounts, 10 million, and all of that. But let's see what our viewers are saying. We have so many questions here for you. Some are asking even up to 2-3 questions. It tells you just how essential this is. So Chidi from Akuma in Imo State is here. And he or she says, when we say those that earn minimum wage or below are exempted from the personal income tax, that's the PIT, are we referring to the gross income or the taxable income? And she also, or he also says that I will need more clarity on the new rent relief allowance and how applicable it is.
Yeah, excellent question. So thanks to the person that asked the question. So this is also one area where it's not, that is not well understood by people. So when you go to the tax laws and you see first 800,000 at 0%, next this at this percent, those amounts are not the gross income that you earn. They're called taxable income. How do you derive taxable income? If my salary is 100,000 naira in a month, that means in a year, my gross salary is 1,200,000, 1.2 million. You don't take that amount into the tax table and start taxing it. You start by taking out what we call deductions. Deductions include your pension contribution, national housing fund. If you borrowed money to build a house, interest is deductible, and a few other things. Life insurance, there's a fairly long list. Those amounts are deducted. Next, we take out what we call reliefs and allowances. Under this new tax law, we have a rent relief that says whatever rent you have paid, calculate 20% of it and take it out of your gross income before you pay tax, because that amount is granted to you as a relief to reduce the taxes you pay, knowing that having to pay rent puts a burden on you because you don't have a home of your own. So when you take out all of those, whatever is left is what we call taxable income. You then take the first 800,000, and this applies to everyone. The first 800,000 that you earn is at 0%. So which means even though I earn 1.2 million naira a year, by the time I take out all deductions and relief, I'm likely to end up with something that is even less than 800,000. I don't pay any tax, even though I earn 1.2 million naira in a year. So that is how the table is meant to work. And that's why we've now put a calculator on our website, because a lot of people, like I said, who are not tax experts, and they won't admit to their, their followers that this is just their own assumption. They speak authoritatively, and then people now go with that. We've seen instances where they said if you earn more than 800,000 naira a year, you pay 20%. There's nothing like that. You can go to the calculator and do it for yourself. So I've explained both how the taxable income is derived and the rent relief. So thank you.
Let's get in more questions because we have so many of them for you, Mr. Oyedele. So Prince Oscar is here. He says, still on PIT, he says, I want to know more about how the PIT will be working, and on the long run, is there any window for tax refund for personal income taxpayers?
Yes, so tax refund is a situation where you've paid more than you're supposed to have paid. Around the world, sometimes you just, towards the end of the year, you just see a mail, under your door, and they tell you that your account has been credited with refund. We want Nigeria to be like that. I worked in the private sector, helping people with their tax compliance for 22 years, and I only managed to get refund for a client only once. This is something that is supposed to be routine. Under this new tax law, we have now created a framework that will enable people to get refund easily. One, we're saying to government, don't share money in the FAQ every month and finish sharing everything. Let's calculate how much refund is due, take it out of the money in the federation account before we share it. Because that extra amount that belongs to the taxpayer is not government money. We should be able to give it back to them once we've done the analysis and they are justified to their refund. The same structure is being created at the state level as well. So, and if you don't want to collect your refund, you can take your refund in a particular tax area, let's say value-added tax if you're a company, and then use it to pay taxes in other areas because it's really your money. And for VAT, for example, the provision of the new law says government must pay you back your money within 30 days, no questions asked. But there's also a responsibility on you that if you make false claims, you pay penalty of 200% of the amount. So I think this new system we have built now is to move us in the right direction where doing the right thing is rewarded and doing the wrong thing is punished, so Nigeria can be a better place.
Okay, so Engineer Akinfolari is here. Akinfolari Bumuyi, he says, I am an engineer. Money are paid into my account. Monies are paid into my account, and they are to execute projects. Therefore, not all the monies are my wages. Now, if the government is to tax me based on monies coming into my bank accounts, there will be problems. For example, he gives an example. He says, 1 million is to be paid to my account. My gain is perhaps only 100K. How will government know that my gain is only 100,000 naira for them to tax and not tax the whole 1 million naira?
Yes, so the engineer has nothing to worry about. So 1 million goes into your account. You know it's for a project, and you know your gain is about 100,000. Like I said, the law says you should declare yourself. You will say that the revenue, because that's your revenue, is 1 million. Your cost is 900,000. Your gain is 100,000. When you look at the law, with 100,000 naira, you don't need to pay tax, but you need to still report yourself, and you don't pay any tax. But if you refuse to do the right thing by declaring your income that is supposed to be taxable or exempt, and then government after 2 or 3 years now says, well, we saw 1 million naira in your account, and we don't know what it is. So we'd assume that it's a taxable income unless you prove otherwise. So again, nothing to worry about for those who want to do the right thing. But for those who are hiding, some of them are earning illegal income. Some of them, it's not even just the bank accounts alone. There's a lot of intelligence around that this system will help us put together. Beyond collecting taxes, these reforms would ensure that, because when you live in a society where tax evasion is allowed to thrive, what it does is that if you and I are operating in the same sector, doing the same business, and you're the honest guy trying to do the right thing, and I'm the guy who is just doing whatever I like, so you have an advantage over me, even though you are the one that is the patriotic and honest citizen, the more of people that we need in Nigeria. So this system is trying to correct that, so that we are only incentivizing doing the right thing. So nothing to worry about, engineer. about money flowing to your account. If it's not your income, nobody will tax it.
Yeah, so more questions for you, Mr. Oyedele. Issa Usman is here. I know you've mentioned this before, but I think this is a concern for many Nigerians as well. It says, please let Mr. Oyedele, should say, tell us why we should pay this tax at this very time when almost all businesses are crippled as a result of this present government policies that are really impacting negatively on all forms of business. This is a big, big concern, not just for Issa Usman, but for many businesses as well, because many Nigerians are saying, why do I need to pay taxes when I'm benefiting practically nothing from the government?
Yes, so yes, Issa is right. So first thing is that this, I believe he's referring to the surcharge. So like I said, the surcharge is not being introduced from the 1st of January 2026. It cannot be introduced until there has been a public gazette. We don't know when that will be. So of course, it's been in the law since 2007 and it wasn't implemented. So it is not right to say that this will be introduced in 2026 from 1st of January because the tax laws are taking effect. This government did not even want it to take effect immediately. That's why they put the date there to be as announced in the official gazette. If that language was not in the law, then people would be right to say that 1st of January 2026, this will take effect. But that's not what the case is. And for the other reforms in the tax laws, small businesses, large businesses should be looking forward to the implementation of the tax laws because it will reduce their tax burden. Many people who really are looking forward and excited about the reform are the people who run businesses. I've met a lot of small business owners and they kept praying. They are counting down for when these reforms will take effect so their tax burden will go down. So it is not right to say Nigerians are suffering and then this tax reform will take effect. No, it's the other way around. It's that things are hard and these reforms want to make things a lot easier for the Nigerian people, stimulate economic activity so that we can all grow together and that there can be shared prosperity. And we're saying this with all sense of responsibility because those issues were addressed specifically in all those tax laws, from value-added tax to personal income tax, to company income tax, to capital gains tax. For example, on capital gains tax, as an individual, you hardly will pay any capital gains tax unless you are selling land. Other than that, you buy and sell shares in the capital market up to 150 million naira a year, you don't pay tax. You sell your car up to 2 cars a year, you don't pay tax. Yeah, the home that you own, you don't pay tax. Practically everything, the capital gains tax has been removed. Same thing with stamp duties, and I can go on and on. And these things are written in black and white in those tax laws. So actually, the objective of this tax reform is to provide relief to the Nigerian people come January 2026 and going forward.
Sorry, when people hear tax, they don't want to hear anything else, especially in climes where they feel that the government is not doing enough. Across governments, they don't see, as you've alluded to, they feel that they provide their own security, their own this, their own that, and the list is endless. But before I ask the next question from this person, people who are a lot of young people now are into forex, trading, assets and instruments. Are they going to be paying tax as well? They make lots of money, but so that they are clear on how to manage their tax. If you can answer that in 1 minute.
Great question, Jeffrey. So before these new tax laws, if you were dealing in crypto, for example, or forex trading, you were being taxed on when you make a gain, and there was no tax relief when you make losses, which was not really fair. So this new tax law says if you make gains from crypto or any virtual asset or any other activity, we will consider your overall situation. Like, for example, you could have bought crypto when it was $80,000 and then it went down to 60, you made losses. You bought some of them at 70, it went up to 100, you made some gains. This new tax law says bring all of it together, and only when there's a net gain should you pay tax. And if the gain is small, your tax is 0%. So this is what fairness looks like everywhere in the world, and that's what has been introduced now. So people just need to understand what the changes are and how it will benefit them so they can apply it out of knowledge, being well informed rather than just going with public narrative, majority of which are incorrect.
All right, I think this may be the last one. Adejuwon Cornelius says, I think this is, I don't know whether this is for everybody. We try to ask questions that are common to all, but let's also take his own concern. The issue of capital allowance, can you explain further? Also, the issue of production day certificate, PDC, can you explain too? I'm sure you understand him.
Yes, so the issue of production day certificate is for tax incentives, something we call economic development incentive. So if you operate in certain sectors from agri to manufacturing and so on, under this new tax law, you have an incentive of between 5 to 10 years for which you will not pay tax. But government needs to validate that you are doing genuine business, not that you get the incentive and you start importing items. Once all of those validations are done, you are given what we call a certificate of production date to certify that you can now enjoy the incentive. So the detailed provisions are in the tax law. And the capital allowance provision that the person also has is we've reformed it so that when you buy an asset, you can enjoy tax deduction on the cost of that asset over a period of time that is more reasonable and aligned with modern day reality so that the pressure on your cash flow and working capital of the business is reduced because we really want you to grow, not borrowing money at high interest rate to be tied down in taxes and levies to the government. Okay. So these are some of the reforms that we have in the new tax laws.
All right, Mr. Oyedele, two questions in one, if you can help us answer in 2 minutes. Content creators are asking questions about how they will be taxed. Content creators, you know how they earn their money. That's on one hand. The other hand is, what do you think, because now the tax nets, all of these tax policies, as you say, is to bring relief and make the system work better, but it's also going to accrue revenue in some parts of the government. How should people now be able to hold government to account? Because for some of us who are journalists, if our aggression it was 10, it's going to be 1 million now, because we know that the government is going to look for, yeah, I can promise you that. So content creation and accountability.
Yes, so if you're a content creator, your tax is not different from the person who is buying and selling spare parts or mobile phones. You will declare the income that you earn from your content creation activities. If you have expenses, for example, you need to look good, maybe you buy more, things to wear, you promote your channels, and you pay to, all these Google and all of them. So you take all that expenses away, and whatever is left is your taxable income, and you apply the table like anybody else. If you are a content creator and you operate as a company, up to 100 million naira that you earn, you don't even pay tax on it. This just looks like too good to be true, but it's there in the tax law. So what I would advise you as a content creator, or anyone for that matter, is read the law. If you can't read it because it's a bit boring and it's a lot, follow analysis from very objective sources. You can go to our website, fiscalreforms.ng, and there are some, organizations that are credible, NESD, top accounting firms, and so on and so forth. See what they analyze. It will help you a lot. And we have various platforms, particularly for small businesses, where we've been engaging and explaining these things to them. We'll do more of it in the coming days, including engagements in local languages. So that is on that. And you can see on the screen how you can follow us on social media, on our website. Now, to the question of accountability, this is something that is so important to all of us, including myself, because the reason why the countries that work are working is because people pay taxes and there's accountability to utilize those resources for the benefit of the people. I always say that, so it costs you more to put up 1 million boreholes for 1 million households than it is for 1 million households to pay a little and for government to provide, water for all of them. The same goes for whether it's electricity or anything else. So it's a well-established principle globally and over the history of mankind that taxation is meant to help society if only it's operated effectively with transparency and with honesty. So that's what we need to demand for. So what I will encourage is, first and foremost, people need to have the right knowledge. You cannot demand accountability on the wrong knowledge or no knowledge at all. Number two is pay attention to what government is doing. If you go to our website now, for example, and you go to our social media account, you find our followers is probably maybe even less than 5,000, right? But then if there's something to show someone who is doing something that adds no value to human life, you may find they have 5 million followers. What are we paying attention to? Whatever you pay attention to, politicians also pay attention to them. So we have to show that these things are important to us so that they can start paying attention to them. And then lastly, is to ask questions and to be very deliberate in how we make our decisions about our governance. And that includes the elections, that includes your engagement during the budgeting process, that includes how you engage with your constituency representatives, local government, states. In Nigeria, we spend like 90% in my estimation of our efforts on just the federal government alone. But guess what? The biggest impact on the people is actually at the local level, followed by the states. And we're not asking enough questions. Let's start asking those questions. And where necessary, feel free to take government to court and ask them for details. Those provisions are there. You can use platforms and associations to do some of these things if you cannot do it alone.
All right.
There's no reason why, and you've seen that done by some of the organized private sector like NECA, like manufacturers. And they are making real impact because of those things that they do. There are platforms like Budget. You know, for example, go to Budget and see how they analyze how government is spending money across Nigeria. Let's follow them, encourage them, and amplify their voices. And overall, as a country, we'll be able to promote better accountability for a better nation.
Oyedele, I know you do a lot of the heavy lifting. This is our service to the country. We needed to take like literally the major part of the program to educate and to bring Nigerians' grievances, angers, ventings to the fore so that they, trust me, maybe we'll forward all the questions to you. It's literally an avalanche of questions from, we'll have another date. Maybe that one will have to do with SMEs alone. We'll dedicate another date for SMEs. And I'm sure that when we call on you, you will be available to do that. But before we let you go, we just wanted to show them that chart on how they can calculate their taxes. So all you have to do is if you have a QR code on your phone, you can do that. Whatever your bracket is, you'll be able to know what taxes you'll be paying to the government at that level. Taiwo Oyedele, thank you so much, sir, for your time, and I'm happy that somebody like that has your demeanor that has been given this responsibility. Because if somebody that is easily angry, I can imagine how much you'll be spending in anger management classes. But no matter what we say and what people say, you keep smiling. So. Great personality, Chairman, Presidential Committee on Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms, Taiwo Oyedele. We're going to have another date for SMEs. Thank you, sir, for coming on the program. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.